Hello, thank you for joining us, and thank you to Attorney Bradley Gerlach. This is Linda Stalters with Schizophrenia and Related Disorders Alliance of America, or SARDA. I am the CEO and founder of SARDA, and am very grateful for Mr. Gerlach for approaching SARDA to help people understand more about Social Security disability. Attorney Bradley Gerlach has been licensed to practice law for over 34 years. He received his BA from Northern Illinois University. He was on the Dean's List and received an award for academic excellence. He is a graduate of the John Marshall Law School. He has extensive litigation experience, having served as a felony prosecutor and has been involved in numerous murder trials. He has received an award from the International Association of Arson Investigators for his participation in a double homicide death penalty case. His office is in Palatine, Illinois, where he concentrates on Social Security disability law. And I want to welcome Mr. Gerlach as he does his presentation, Social Security, What You Don't Know Can Hurt You.
It's a sad but common fact that people that suffer from mental illness oftentimes suffer in silence. Look at Robin Williams, and more recently, look at Anthony Bourdain. There are two types of programs provided by the government that may be able to help. These are Social Security Disability Insurance, or S.S.D.I, and Supplemental Security Income, or S.S.I. S.S.D.I appears in Title II of the Social Security Act and became effective in 1956 after being signed into law by President Eisenhower. It spent 20 years bumping around in Congress. S.S.I appears in Title 16 of the Social Security Act and it was signed into law by President Nixon in 1972. There's a statutory definition of disability that applies to both S.S.D.I and S.S.I. Next slide, please. Definition of disability. And I'm going to give you the technical definition. The law defines disability as the inability to engage in any substantial gainful activity, S.G.A, by reason of any medically determinable physical or mental impairments which can be expected to result in death or which has lasted or can be expected to last for a continuous period of not less than 12 months. The Social Security Administration defines physical or mental impairments as an impairment that results from anatomical, physiological, or psychological abnormalities which are demonstrable by medically acceptable clinical and laboratory diagnostic techniques. So what is substantial gainful activity? Substantial gainful activity refers to a specified amount of money made from working. You must have earned less than the S.G.A amount. For 2019, the S.G.A amount is $1,220 a month and $2,040 a month for blind people. Next slide, please. Eligibility. Eligibility for S.S.D.I and S.S.I, and there's a difference between the two programs. S.S.D.I is based upon payments made into the Federal Insurance Contribution Act, or FICA, that were made while a person was working. To be eligible for S.S.D.I, you have to have enough work credits based upon employment. In terms of work credits and eligibility for S.S.D.I, you can go to ssa.gov/planners/credits, and you can try to calculate your credits. Eligibility for S.S.D.I, next slide, please. You have to be, S.S.D.I has a work requirement. You must be under 65. However, the work requirement for S.S.D.I will not apply if the onset of disability can be proved on or before the age of 22. The person is allowed to collect on the work credits of their parents. In 2018, the average benefits for S.S.D.I was $1,171 for an individual per month and $1,851 per month for a family. So in summary, S.S.D.I, the monthly benefits are calculated based upon how much you paid into FICA, and it does not depend upon the resources you have. S.S.D.I, there's a 5-month waiting period before you receive benefits. Next slide, please. Eligibility for S.S.I. Eligibility involves blindness is one of the criteria. You must be 65 years of age or older or disabled, and disabled would apply here. And you must meet certain asset limits. The income limit for S.S.I in 2019 was $771 per month for an individual and $1,150 per month for a couple. The asset limit is $2,000 for an individual and $3,000 for a couple. Next slide, please. Substantial gainful activity. You must have earned less than the S.G.A amount. In 2018, the S.G.A amount was $1,180 a month, and in 2019, the S.G.A amount was $1,220 a month. Next slide, please. Disability. Again, it's the inability to engage in any substantial gainful activity by reason of a medically determinable physical or mental impairment, which can be expected to result in death, or which has resulted or can be expected to last for a continuous period of not less than 12 months. Let me break that down. Next slide, please. We got ahead of each other. Should be simplifying the definition of disability. Can we go back? There we go. I'm sorry. Simplifying the definition of disability is the inability to perform substantial gainful activity by a medical condition expected to last 1 year or result in death. So again, the statutory definition I break down into one sentence. It's the inability to perform substantial gainful activity caused by a medical condition or conditions expected to last 1 year or result in death. Next slide, please. Social Security disability process. Normally, you apply for benefits. In many instances, that's denied. You ask for reconsideration. In the event that's denied, you ask for a hearing before the administrative law judge. That's where a lot of cases are decided. If you don't like the ruling from the administrative law judge, you can go to an appeals council, which is 3 administrative law judges. If you don't agree with the opinion from the appeals council, you can go to federal district court. Next slide, please. 5 steps of disability. Okay, there's a 5-step process. The first step is there's no substantial gainful activity in terms of income. The second step, there's a severe medically determinable impairment under the rules. Third, the impairment meets or equals a listing. 4, taking into account the residual functioning capacity, which I'll refer to as RFC, he or she cannot perform past relevant work. That's PRW. And step 5, given the residual functioning capacity and considering age, education, and work experience, there is no work that exists in the national economy in significant numbers. Next slide, please. Understanding this 5-step process. So step 1, the monthly substantial gainful activity amount must be less than $1,220 a month for 2019. Step 2, you must have a severe medically determinable impairment. Step 3, the impairment meets or equals a listed impairment. If there is no disability finding at step 3, you go to residual functioning capacity. So if we could go to the next slide, please. And I have the impairment listed for schizophrenia. First of all, schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorders. In the list of impairments, this is 12.03. These disorders are characterized by delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech, or grossly disorganized or catatonic behavior, causing a clinically significant decline in functioning. Symptoms and signs may include, but are not limited to, inability to initiate and persist in goal-directed activities, social withdrawal, flat or inappropriate affect, poverty of thought and speech, loss of interest or pleasure, disturbances of mood, odd beliefs and mannerisms, and paranoia. Examples of disorders that we evaluate in this category include schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, delusional disorder, and psychotic disorder due to another medical condition. Next slide, please. And this is the listing for schizophrenia. And this is 1203 in the listing for impairments for Social Security. Schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorders satisfied by A and B or A and C. I'll read A. Medical documentation of one or more of the following: delusions or hallucinations, disorganized thinking, speech, or grossly disorganized behavior or catatonia. Next slide, please. B, extreme limitation of one or marked limitation of two of the following areas of mental functioning. 1, understand, remember, or apply information. 2, interact with others. 3, concentrate, persist, or maintain pace. 4, adapt or manage oneself. Next slide, please. C, your mental disorder in this listing category is serious and persistent. That is, you have a medically documented history of the existence of the disorder over a period of at least 2 years, and there is evidence of both. Okay, 1, medical treatment, mental health therapy, psychosocial support, or a highly structured setting that is ongoing and that diminishes the symptoms and signs of your mental disorder. And 2, marginal adjustment. That is, you have minimal capacity to adapt to changes in your environment or to demands that are not already part of daily life. If there is no disability finding at step 3, that is, if you do not meet or match a listing, that you're fine with the slides. Thank you. You go to residual functional capacity. Okay, meeting or matching a listing can be very difficult. So we go to residual functioning capacity. Okay, and what that is Social Security Administration will consider what a person can still do in terms of past relevant work. So if there is no disability finding at step 3, then Social Security Administration determines your residual functional capacity. 5-step process. Given the residual functioning capacity, again, they look at age, education, and work experience and determine whether there's work in the national economy in significant numbers. If past relevant work experience can be done, or you can perform other jobs that exist in the national economy, your claim may be denied. Okay, step 5 is probably the hardest step. It oftentimes involves vocational experts. If there's an adjustment to other work that cannot be made, they will find an individual disabled. Work which exists in the national economy means work which exists in significant numbers in the region where the person lives or in several regions of the country. It does not matter if there's a job opening for that person. It's work that exists in the national economy in significant numbers, and it can be in other parts of the country. It doesn't have to be where the person lives. So if we could go to the next slide, please. Just let me try to simplify the 5-step process. Number one, are you working? Are you making less than $1,220 a month for 2019? 2, is your medical diagnosis keeping you from working? 3, does your condition meet or equal a listing? If it doesn't meet or equal a listing, then we have to go to 4, and we go into residual functioning capacity. But I simplify that in terms of, can you do the work you did before? If you cannot do the work you did before, can you do any other type of work? And in terms of step 4, regarding previous work, they basically go back for 15 years from the date you applied. So can we go to the next slide, please? There are some instances where you may be asked to perform a consultative exam. This is for diagnostic purposes, and it's not for treatment purposes. These doctors are on a panel, and they get paid a flat fee for performing the exam. The report by the consulting doctor can be given controlling weight by the administrative law judge. That means the consulting doctor from the Social Security Administration can basically trump, or his opinion will be given more weight than your treating doctor. Beginning in 2017, that's what they ruled. You want to make sure the Social Security Administration has all of your medical records from your psychiatrist, psychologist, and therapist that you've seen before and are currently seeing. Hospital records are especially important. The reason for this is doctors are less likely to contradict a treating physician. Can we see the next slide, please? Make sure they've got your medical history. You'll be asked about your medical history, and you'll be asked about your symptoms and how they affect your ability to work and to engage in everyday life activities. Family and friends, they may want to know about your relationship with your family and your friends and any social activities that you participate in. Education, they'll want to find out if you had any problems in school. And finally, work history. This will include attempts to work and what happened with those work attempts. Next slide, please. You should bring with you or have with you your current list of medications, the dates of any hospitalizations, and the names and locations of the hospitals. You need a list of all the treatments you have received. You need a list of current and previous diagnoses. And you need a list of all the assisted living facilities and the dates you resided in those facilities. Next slide, please. They may be looking for symptoms of exaggeration or malingering, meaning that you're faking. So, please do not exaggerate. You'll possibly be watched the whole time. This would be from the time you pull up in your car, get out of the car, walk into the building, while you're in the waiting room, when you leave, and when you get back into your car. Keep in mind, they may be watching you. If the doctor only spends 5 minutes with you, you may want to make note of that and inform your attorney. There may be grounds for an objection. Next slide, please. So, say you've applied for Social Security disability, it's been denied, you've asked for reconsideration, that's denied, you're in front of the administrative law judge, okay? The hearing before the administrative law judge, at least in the area where I'm from, the Chicago area, oftentimes can take nearly 2 years after the date of the initial application. This is an administrative hearing that is supposed to be informal and conducted in a non-adversarial manner. There is no lawyer on the other side. The Social Security Administration does not have an attorney at the hearing. The only time there would be an attorney at the hearing is if you went to federal court. Most claimants find the hearing to be non-threatening, and no one will cross-examine you. You may be questioned by the administrative law judge, though. All the witnesses testify under oath. The administrative law judge conducts a hearing. All the ALJs which is an administrative law judge. Many of them will conduct hearings differently from each other. Most of these hearings are tape recorded. Sometimes they're videotaped. Typically, an administrative law judge will make an opening statement. He'll normally read what is called the exhibit file, which contains work history, medical records, and states why benefits were denied. The administrative law judge will often question the claimant, that's the person applying for disability, and oftentimes there will be a vocational expert that will be testifying in many cases. There may also be a medical expert. Medical experts are physicians that provide testimony and interpretation of medical records. The vocational expert will provide testimony as to the variety of available jobs regarding a number of occupations and whether an individual can perform those jobs given their impairments. So they will testify as to various jobs that may be available that a person can perform even with their impairments. These are based upon the impairments that the claimant has. Next slide, please. The medical guidelines, or the grids, they're medical vocational guidelines. They're referred to as grids. They don't apply. Basically, if somebody's 50 years old or older, they have a better chance of getting Social Security disability. The reason for that is it's believed that the older you are, the harder it is to find a job. But those only apply to physical impairments. They do not apply to mental impairments. I just want you to be aware of that in case you hear of the grid rules. Residual functioning capacity. It can be very hard to meet or match a listing at step 3, especially schizophrenia or schizoaffective disorder. Okay? It's important to have your own RFC, or residual functioning capacity form. The mental RFC form is completed by a psychiatrist or a psychologist that will make reference to the mental symptoms. These may be things like an inability to think logically, inability to remember or pay attention, hallucinations or hearing voices, things like that. The mental RFC will also indicate the ability to concentrate, the ability to socially interact in the workplace, and successfully perform simple, routine, repetitive, or workplace tasks. These RFC forms are often the basis for the denial of claims. It's very important to have your own RFC form. I have my own RFC forms specifically tailored to the impairments that a person has. And you can submit these. I submit these to a doctor or a psychologist pertaining to my client. Okay? In the case involving schizophrenia, I would ask the doctor to identify the patient's symptoms, indicate whether he or she suffers from delusions or hallucinations, has difficulty concentrating or thinking, whether he experiences a flight of ideas, grossly disorganized behavior or catatonia, disorganizational thinking, whether the person is frequently distracted or easily distracted, has difficulty sustaining attention, and difficulty organizing tasks. And also whether they suffer from intrusive thoughts. I will also ask the doctor to rate the degree of limitation in the following areas, and that would be none to mild, moderate, marked, or extreme. And I would have the doctor check these off, whether they're mild, moderate, marked, or extreme. And that would be understanding information, remembering information, applying information, interacting with others, concentrating, persisting, maintaining pace. Also, their ability to adapt to the workplace. I would also ask the doctor to assess the severity of the patient's limitations in the following specific areas. And I would ask the doctor to rate these as good, fair, poor, or none. And that would be follow work rules. Again, assess these as to whether they're good, fair, poor, or none. Follow work rules. Okay. Again, next one would be deal with the public. Next one would be persist at assigned tasks. The next one would be work at a consistent pace. The next one would be demonstrate reliability. And the next one would be ability to complete tasks in a timely manner. So if a person did not meet or equal a listing, I would argue that because of hallucinations or hearing voices, they would not be able to follow instructions. They would not be able to understand instructions. They would not be able to keep on task. Oftentimes, they would not be able to get out of bed to go to work. They would miss work. They would miss, a lot of work, more than an employer would be able to tolerate. So that basically concludes my presentation. Thank you.
So this is Russell Stalters. If we have anybody that has a question, you should be able to unmute yourself. And you're unmuted, Linda.
If there are no questions, or while people are trying to raise their questions, I want to thank Mr. Gerlach for an excellent presentation, and the recording of this presentation will be available on our website, and we will include it in our newsletters and such, so that people can answer questions that they might have in the future. And this will be helpful for our phone volunteers that often have people who call in and have questions about what they can do and what are some of the steps that they can take to help themselves or their loved ones in their sustainability.
Yeah, just let me say, anybody that has a question, they can feel free to call me at my office or on my cell, or they can email me, and I'll do my best to answer.
Okay, great. We'll be sure and have all of this information available for people.
Denise had a question. I went ahead and unmuted you, Denise. Denise, we can't hear you. Oh. Let's see. Okay, she's going to type it. Yeah, for some reason we can't hear you. And Denise, go ahead and type it. You said that S.S.I. could collect. Okay, you said that a S.S.I. could collect S.S.D.I. from a family member. How does that work?
If you've got a person is disabled, if you've got an adult that's disabled, and if they've got children under the age of 18, it is possible that those children may be able to also collect disability. I generally don't represent children, I represent adults.
Okay, hopefully that answered your question, Denise. Any other questions before we sign off? Oh, she has another question. She said, I was under the impression that when my husband retires, it would transfer to my son.
Okay, again, that deals with retirement, Social Security retirement. That doesn't really deal with disability. So I'm sorry, I can't really help you there. Thank you.
And she said, thank you. So if there's no other questions, I think we'll go ahead and close it out. If you want to close out things, Linda.
Thank you so much again. Really appreciate Russ helping with the technology.
Thank you.
And very grateful for Mr. Gerlach for taking his time and reaching out to us. And I hope this will be helpful for other people. And if you have further questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Mr. Gerlach. And if you need more clarification, there might be other attorneys that can help with those questions, like such as Denise has. Thank you again, and I'm just going to put in a plug for our November 4th event in New York City. It's Brains on Broadway. Please don't forget to go online at SARDA, SARDAA.org, ARG, to register for that symposium. We have world-renowned experts who are speaking about reclassification of schizophrenia, spectrum disorders, and how we can all work together. We have the likes of Dr. Jeffrey Lieberman, Glenn Close is our honorary host, and the Assistant Secretary of HHS, Dr. McCants Katz, will be our keynote speaker for our reception in the evening. And if you're into smooth jazz, Paul Taylor will be performing for us. Thank you again for all of your time, and we hope that we can talk some more again soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.